Hello there, my name's Devon. I'm one half of this channel that you're currently watching this on. My friend Ethan, the other half, my counterpart, is doing a top 10 video games of 2024 list video kind of thing. And I'm doing something similar, but I'm going to do movies, and I'm only going to do 5, because I feel the top 5 was a lot tougher for me than top 10. And this is kind of my first time doing this type of video, so we'll see how this goes. My personal tastes in movies are science fiction, horror, and sometimes I also like period pieces and thrillers, those kind of things. I've been getting more into dramas, I feel like, in the last year, or at least trying to, try those out a little bit. Very still kind of picky on that kind of stuff, but my goal for like 2025, for example, is to try to see more stuff outside my comfort zone. But my personal tastes are reflected in this list, so there might be a movie that isn't on here that maybe I haven't seen, maybe because it just isn't my cup of tea typically. But if you have a top 5 list maybe in your head or written down somewhere, please share it with me in the comments. I would love to see it. And I should say, I won't spoil these movies on my list here. I'm not going to go too deep into like specifics or anything like that. Just going to be kind of the general vibe or the themes of the movie. I might maybe talk about some of the characters that I liked and whatnot, or maybe the cinematography, right? But I'm not going to get into like any details or anything. So if you're worried about that, don't worry. I'm not going to go into spoilers. Hope that all makes sense. Like I said, I've kind of putting this all together for the first time, seeing how it goes. Hopefully I'll get better at it. But let's get started with this video, because you came to this place for magic. All right, the first movie on my list, my number 5. I originally had this at, I think, around a 6 or a 7, and I'm always kind of fluctuating in my list. Maybe even doing this video, if I had to do it 3 weeks from now, maybe it would change slightly. I don't know, but I will be honest, this movie was around a 6 or a 7. But the more I kind of thought on it the last couple weeks here, and was just thinking about the other movies I've seen, I realized this movie is just a breath of fresh air compared to, a lot of blockbusters and maybe franchises. This is a movie, that just felt very original, and obviously had a lot of homages to movies like The Shining, and more especially, to body horror films. Body horror films typically, I love horror, but body horror films aren't like my favorite subgenre of horror films, but I like them every once in a while. And yeah, I just really liked this one. Let's talk about the movie The Substance.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
So first off, pretty bummed I didn't get to see this in theaters. I think it was doing limited screens, maybe at like AMC and Regal and all that. I think I saw it in the AMC app back in September when this movie was out, but I watched it on I think it was Mubi or Tubi. I don't know. They're all similar in my head, and I think they were technically the distributor. But anyways, yeah, I watched it at home. I always try to see movies in theaters when I can, and that's my preferred, and I think the best way to watch movies is watch it on the biggest screen possible with the best sound possible. But yeah, I missed seeing this in theaters. So yeah, this movie is directed by Coralie Farjat. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. They're from France, and it stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. Probably the biggest thing I liked about this movie is that it tackles a couple different themes. The biggest one being that societal pressure that women often face, in terms of beauty standards, right? Or maybe body issues, not being pretty enough. And more in particular in this movie, it's, more focused on an older actress who is losing her job because of her age and her looks. But one of the other themes is, I guess the best way to put it is like spoofing. It kind of talks about the different like substances and cosmetics, people will try, to maybe lose weight or change their appearance, Botox, those kind of things. But some of those, substances maybe are like something you only see on TV, or, maybe see like it mentioned in your social circle, right? I guess Ozempic, could count in this regard. This movie kind of tackles that a little bit. That's where the title "The Substance" comes from, right? I think it does a good job of kind of showing, like, some of these things that people tell, oh, try this, do this, may not necessarily be healthy for you. And I think that's kind of one of the themes in this movie that I think is, underlying the main kind of message of the film, right? Of, talking about like I said, body image issues. But yeah, like I said, this is probably my favorite thing about this movie is the themes. And this isn't necessarily a requirement for like horror movies. Some horror movies are just like, hey, this is a slasher, just about a dude cutting people up. Like, I totally get the appeal of that, and I do like those once in a while. But to me, the more, like, at least for me, more memorable horror movies, the ones that I'll remember the most, are ones that typically have some sort of message or are trying to tackle a certain subject. A good example is like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, more so the original one. That one was kind of a reflection of people's fear of, like, the Red Scare, communism. Your neighbors possibly are communists and, very scary people. And do you really know your neighbors? And, that kind of thing. And then another good example would be like the Twilight Zone, even the more modern remakes of it. Twilight Zone had maybe a different subject every episode, but usually it was about society in some way, right? Where, hey, let's talk about injustices, in the judicial system, perhaps, or, hey, here's a big fear a lot of people have, and, let's kind of play on that. I just remember there's one about, like, especially during the 50s, 60s there, worry about the Cold War, right? So there's a lot of them were about, like, once again, communism or atomic bombs, right? So to me, this movie kind of, or I shouldn't say kind of, is more memorable in that regard, that it, has some strong themes in it and is, trying to tell you something and wants you to have that conversation. Another great aspect of this movie is that the story itself is very well paced. You're, in a way, you're cheering for Demi Moore's character, Elizabeth, but also oftentimes also getting very frustrated with her decisions when you're like, no, don't do that, or don't do this action, right? You're kind of grappling with, you cheering for her, but also kind of, like I said, getting very frustrated, maybe angry at her character. And then her kind of counterpart, right, in a way, Sue, played by Margaret Qualley there, she's kind of similar, right, where you're kind of like cheering for her, but maybe you're almost resenting her in some aspects of the film because of her dynamic with, Elizabeth. So I think that's a really cool way to kind of structure the story and how you relate to these characters, and you're always going back and forth of getting frustrated, and in a way you kind of get in their shoes a little bit in that way, and I think that's really, really cool. Another thing I really liked about the characters is actually like kind of like outside of the characters themselves, but it's more of just like kind of the art direction, the color palette that's used for both Elizabeth and Sue. Elizabeth has kind of that dark and gray kind of backdrop most of the time, kind of absence of color. And then Sue, has very bright colors, very, almost eccentric at some points, to kind of just show that division and that dynamic difference between them. I also want to point out the music as well. It was really fun. It was like dance synth stuff, but very like in your face at moments, but in a way that helps, deliver home, certain parts of the movie, right? Just really like simplistic, but in a good way, where it really captures the tone of the film. And if I'm being honest, I need to add it to my playlist of cool soundtracks, because it's really, really cool soundtrack. Overall, this movie, I keep using the word fun, I think, already, maybe once or twice, but it is just fun. It's very good, but also felt really real in many ways. Like I said, kind of tackling those issues of maybe body dysmorphia or beauty standards, all those kind of things. And I think that's really cool. But if you also just love body horror stuff and you for some reason haven't seen this or haven't heard about this, and I'll say this isn't like body horror in the sense of like Saw or anything, that kind of thing. This is more like the movie Society, if you've seen that one. Kind of that classic body horror, vibe, even The Thing, right? And it starts off really slow. Like, I think it does a great job of like easing into the body horror, but even starts with just kind of gross stuff in general, or like even just the opening scene is kind of gross. So maybe don't eat while watching this movie. This is not I would say, popcorn movie, or just a movie you'd have any snacks with. This is maybe have an empty stomach and maybe eat afterwards, or maybe you won't want to either. But yeah, number 5 on my list is The Substance, and I've seen a lot of folks put this as their number 1 horror movie of the year, and I totally see why. It's really, really good. All right, this next movie, number 4 on my list, I honestly didn't think would be here, not a million years. I remember seeing a trailer for it, and I'm like, okay, why? There's a sequel to this kind of late 90s movie that I feel like no one really talks about. Interesting that they're bringing it back, but that's kind of the trend now, right? Is doing a remake or bringing something back that was generally popular, maybe not like the number 1 thing on the planet, but generally popular, right? And I rewatched the first one, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I kind of get why people would have liked this in the 90s. I do generally enjoy this. It's a drama film with some romance elements in it, and also has giant action set pieces, kind of throw our characters together. Maybe they want to or not, so in case you're trying to still figure out what I'm talking about, it is, I'm just gonna tell you, it's Twisters.
Oh, she's perfect!
She's gorgeous!
You thought you could destroy a tornado.
We never had a chance.
You want one?
But yeah, like this movie, like I said, going in, I was like kind of like, okay, we'll see how this goes. I hope it's just fun. And folks, compared to everything else on this list, this is like by definition to me a popcorn movie. The type of movie you go to the movie theater for, you get your popcorn, you get your soda, and you're just here to have fun and not think too hard necessarily, but just like go in this movie and have fun, maybe have a couple laughs and be like, ooh, right, from the action and whatnot. That's what this movie is. In a nutshell. And it was so good at doing that, that's why it's on my top 5. I just can't deny that this movie was really, really fun. And also, I should have mentioned this, is that to me, and this is coming from someone who often, critiques America politically and whatnot, but this, to me, was a very, like, hell yeah, America movie. This is like, man, America is cool. Like, we do these things in America. I mean, obviously, this movie gets the idea of storm chasers and puts it, on steroids. But this movie really is just like, hey, we have like the biggest land, area, tornado alley, right, in the world, and we have these people going into it and chasing it. I mean, it's just, and there's a lot of other elements in this movie that are very much like America, hell yeah. And I don't even mean that like in a pro-military or anything sense, but more of just like, or even patriotism sense, just very much of like, they're doing a lot of like what I feel like a lot of people who aren't from America maybe look at America and be like, wow, they have so much freedom. Like, I don't know how else to describe it than that without really getting into spoilers or whatnot. But yeah, this movie is like America, the movie, but more so like the Midwest, Tornado Alley, the South, even a little bit elements of that, but just America in a nutshell. I don't know how else to describe it than that. I hope that made sense. Maybe if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Outside of like the twisters, and the tornadoes and all that in this movie, like, to me, it's all about Daisy Edgar Jones and Glenn Powell's characters, and like their chemistry was just funny. It was charming. It was great. You just fell in love with these characters, and then you're cheering for them, at one moment, and then you're also like, man, Glenn's character is such a douche, like, but then he has that charm to him, and then you wind up really getting invested in him. And same with, our main character, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, right? That like Kate, that's her name. she's just a character you cheer for, and you're following her journey like through this movie. And yeah, it's just a really they just really work well together. And if anything, I want more. I don't know if they're making a Twisters 3, but I want more of them. I want to see what they continue doing after the events of this movie. Yeah, if you've seen the first one, maybe you haven't seen this one because maybe you had kind of the same maybe watching the trailer, like I said, I kind of had this impression that, like, man, seems like another blockbuster being remade or made a sequel, you know, of something in the past, that just to try to get that nostalgia factor. And there is elements of that, but really, to me, it's like all the things that I thought were good in the first Twister movie, they turned up to 11 in Twisters, and it just works even better. To me, they just pressed all the right buttons, and like I said, I went into the movie kind of feeling like, we'll see if I enjoy this. And this is my top 5. And I was telling everyone about this movie. Like, I told my mom, go see this, because I know she generally liked the first one. And she, you know, was blown away by it too. And it's just, hell yeah, man, it's Twisters. That's the energy of this film. That's why it got up to number 4 on my list. Like I said, I didn't think it would ever happen going into it, but it's number 4 on my list. It's just a really, really fun movie, a popcorn movie. You know, it's great. What you should do is get a Twisted Tea, go to your 7-Eleven, get a Twisted Tea, and watch Twisters, all right? Get twisted. So the third movie on my list, I'm honestly, like, depressed about, in the sense that it just bombed, dude. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I don't know if it's, like, franchise fatigue, but to be fair, there hasn't been one of these in, 5, 6, 7 years at this point, and before that, it was, 20 years? Or whatever, how the timeline works on that. And I just don't know really why this movie bombed. I don't know if it was at the wrong place at the wrong time, but there was like no other movies coming out at that point that I feel like were necessarily competing with it or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know why George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, like just bombed at the box office.
The darkest of angels.
So yeah, Furiosa to me deserved better. Like, I don't know where all the Mad Max Fury Road fans went. Like, did they all just, I don't know, just like leave to another planet or something? I don't understand why people didn't show up to see this movie, because that movie, you know, did very well in the box office. And you know, that's the only Mad Max movie that I've seen, really, as well. I think I've seen parts of the old ones when I was growing up, but I couldn't tell you, like, which one or the plots or anything like that. But, like, yeah, I want to know where did all the fans go? Like, I don't understand why this movie bombed. I mean, one of the elements I think maybe could have played into it was, you know, maybe folks were skeptical about the character of Furiosa being played by Anya Taylor-Joy, which isn't fair at all, because she completely dominated this role. I think, you know, she pretty much portrayed the character in pretty much the same light as Charlize Theron did, and I thought she had great chemistry with Tom Burke's Praetorian Jack and Chris Hemsworth Dementis, which is, by the way, a great name. And yeah, I just feel like if you liked Mad Max Fury Road, like, you will love this movie. To me, it's just more of that. But to me, I actually like this, I think, a little bit more, just because of its story and characters. I feel like, you know, Fury Road's great as like kind of like a one-shot, you know, movie, right, where you're trying to get from point A to point B, and that's really cool. This one's definitely doing a little bit more backstory stuff, but also showing more cities and towns and whatnot. But, you know, what I think I like about this movie and, you know, Fury Road, and this is something that George Miller understands as a director and a storyteller in a kind of fantasy setting, right, is that you don't need to show everything. You know, I think an example that is a bad example of this is Solo, a Star Wars story. You know, the kind of backstory of Han Solo, where like every reference he made in the other movies is now explained in this movie. I never really liked that. I think you gotta let mystery kind of be part of a character's story. Not everything needs to be explained of when they were born, who their parents are, why they're here, all those things, right? And if I can maybe sense maybe that some people with this movie, I think maybe going in, and even I was kind of like this, was like, is this going to be like a solo Star Wars story? And it wasn't. It was just like a more honest prequel of like, hey, here's the events leading up to how she got to where she was, Furiosa, to where we see her in Mad Max and Fury Road, and like why she's doing the things she's doing. I still think Fury Road's a good movie by, standalone, but I feel like this movie helps elevate that movie even more. But yeah, I really like this movie because of the other characters in it as well. Just like Dementis, like I said, Chris Hemsworth was amazing. But yeah, Dementis is a cool character. I really liked him. I don't want to spoil kind of what happens in terms of his character arc or anything like that. But yeah, Chris Hemsworth, he crushes this role. I really liked his character and his relationship with Furiosa. I think he's a great villain, in this movie. Yeah, I really liked him. But you also have characters from Fury Road that are in there too. That was great to see them come back and kind of see a little bit of kind of what they were doing pre Fury Road, right? Yeah, this movie to me is just kind of expanding the storyline a little bit, but also still, like I said, going back to what I think George Miller understands is like letting your imagination kind of put the pieces together of other parts maybe they show in it. We're like, hey, we're going to show this one city and it kind of looks like it operates like that, but we're not going to show every little detail about it. We'll let your imagination kind of fill in the blanks or whatnot. If anything, it kind of reminds me a bit of like if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons or done any kind of role-playing game, if you've been a DM maybe before, Dungeon Master, that, maybe when you're describing a scene, you leave, maybe you want to point to one detail in particular to maybe part of a quest or something, but you do explain the other parts, right? And I think that's important for storytelling because it lets the either the person participating, like if you're doing Dungeons and Dragons, the players participating, be able to bounce off of that or role play off of that. But just if you're watching a movie, right? You show something in the background, someone who looks cool, maybe has cool armor, and then you start thinking about, man, where did you get that armor? Well, we'll never know, but like I can use my imagination. Oh, I bet it's that. Well, he has skulls on it. Maybe he's killed some people. Those kind of little details I really like, and that's what I like about George Miller. Fury Road, and even more so in Furiosa, is that those little details are put throughout in a scene through cities and settings and whatnot, and it kind of just lets that kind of open-endedness speak for itself a bit, if that makes sense. Yeah, this is a really good movie, man, and I'm just really bummed it bombed. I don't know if we'll ever get another Mad Max movie anytime soon, or maybe ever, I don't know. Just the way it bombed, man, like, it's crazy. Yeah, I'm just looking at the numbers here again. This movie, Furiosa, had a worldwide box office of just 174 million and only got 67 domestically. And then Mad Max Fury Road got 379 worldwide for comparison. Like, I just don't get it. I don't know. Everyone in this movie who made this movie deserved better. It sucks because I thought it was really great. I saw it actually back-to-back nights. I saw it with some friends the one night, and then the next night I took my girlfriend to go see it because she couldn't make it the first time we went. So I saw it back-to-back nights, and I loved it both times. I didn't get any fatigue from seeing it back-to-back. So yeah, really bummed it bombed. But yeah, I'm hoping maybe George Miller has some deep pockets, and he's like, I'm going to make another one sometime soon. So we'll see. So yeah, speaking loosely of Anya Taylor-Joy, with Furiosa, this next movie I'm about to talk about, she's actually been in 2 of the director who directed this movies. Is that how English works?
We are here encountering the vampire. Nosferatu.
That's right. Number 2 is Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers. This movie isn't necessarily just a remake. This is an homage, really, to one of the first horror films, Nosferatu, which is really a Dracula story, right? In case you don't know, Nosferatu in 1922, it was called Nosferatu, and names and stuff were changed because it was supposed to be a Dracula movie, and to avoid copyright, they changed names and stuff, but it's pretty much the Dracula story. Robert Eggers, who's slowly becoming one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite, this is his fourth movie, and just like his other ones, this is technically a period piece first. He always puts in the extra mile of doing the research and everything, make sure he gets as accurate as possible when he makes his movies, is of getting the historical accuracy of all the clothing, the set design, even how they're speaking. The movie The Witch, his first movie there, they're all speaking like Old English, and I think that's really cool. He really just gets into the details and whatnot, and just if you watch any interview with him, he's really such a nerd for history, and as someone who went to school for history, I get where he's coming from, and I think that's why I like his work a lot, is because we're on the same wavelength of like, man, I just love this time period, and like how people spoke, what people wore, what conditions they lived in. All those things are just so interesting. But yeah, out of his 4 movies here, or Nosferatu being the 4th, and I watched all of them, I should say. I watched all of them leading up to Nosferatu. I've seen them all previously in theaters when they came out, but rewatched all of them, kind of, binged them over the course of like 2-3 weeks. And, I really could see the progression that he as a filmmaker he had from The Witch to The Lighthouse to The Northman. I could see that progression, and I feel like Nosferatu, all the elements of what I liked in all his other ones all came together as one in Nosferatu here. He just hits it on all cylinders, man. Like he gets everything right, I think, in this movie. I think this is easily his best work. I think he's come a long way from The Witch, and I love The Witch, but like I feel like this is just everything he's been trying to like go for in this movie. I think he's finally got the full budget and like permission from producers. That's what it kind of felt like, where it's like, okay, we've unlocked the vault here, we're letting him cook at his full, and that's what Nosferatu is. So let's actually talk about the movie itself. Like I said, no spoilers, but Nosferatu is a gothic, slow burning, creepy, unsettling, erotic, and just downright evil, tale being told to us, us watching this movie. If I'm being honest, the movie is for like, the freaks like me who like all those adjectives I just said. Like in a pot, a big stew. We love this shit. And if you love all those adjectives I just said together in a movie, then this is for you. So yeah, Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok is just, I don't know, I really don't have any words besides like phenomenal. He just knocks it out of the park. I mean, he is scary, creepy. If you liked him in It, I think he's 10 times better than this. I mean, if you didn't tell me it was Bill Skarsgård, I wouldn't know. He's just that good, man. I mean, I hope he keeps doing monster movies, because he's just so good at it. And one thing I like about his design, Orlok's design, I won't spoil it too much outside of just saying it's different, and not what I was expecting, but it also just fits the world. And I think once again that goes is a testament rather to Robert Eggers' goal for historical accuracy while still doing folklore and doing a monster movie. And another part I should have mentioned with Skarsgård is his voice he does is so good. I actually watched this movie in Dolby. We always try to see every movie in Dolby because it has the best sound. And to me, it's kind of like, it's not, the screen isn't as big as IMAX, but it definitely looks bigger than your average digital screen, at least the Dolby that I go to. And it's just nice and loud, and you can actually hear really more of the details of sound editing and whatnot with it. But yeah, with Orlok's voice in particular in the Dolby Theater, it felt like he was like right behind me, speaking in my ear, and it just made my skin crawl in all the best ways. Speaking of the rest of the cast, Lily Rose Depp as Ellen Hunter, yeah, she devoured this role. Get it? Because it's a monster movie. No, yeah, she was amazing. She, it's shown in the trailer just a little bit of it. And there's way more of it in the movie of her kind of like her being, almost possessed, right? Or like, having the kind of spasms and contortions in her face. And she does an amazing job at that. It's creepy. It's unsettling. And yeah, I don't know how she did some of the shit with her face, man. And then they said there's no CG or anything to like add to it. It's all just her, which is great. I love that they're like, let's see what you can do and like makes it more scary, right? Because it is real, in the sense of she's actually making those facial expressions or moving her body in that way, in an uncomfortable way. Honestly, she might be the scariest thing in this movie, now I think about it, in terms of just like the energy she brings, the kind of, yeah, like I said, the unsettlingness of her. She actually might be the scariest thing in this movie. And then when you add her with Count Orlok and Nosferatu, it's just extra scary. I also want to shout out Nicholas Hoult, who plays Thomas Hutter. He was perfect for this role. He's great. And no offense to Harry Styles, but I'm glad we didn't get him. I don't think he would have worked in this film. I think Nicholas was great. I think he especially his dynamic with the other characters and Count Orlok, more specifically, he's great. You also had Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Frederick Harding. Loved him. I feel like he kind of plays the kind of level-headed, almost skeptic in the whole movie, and you kind of relate to him in that way. And then there's the legend, William Dafoe, right? Who's been in now, I think, three of the four Robert Eggert movies, and he just works so well with him. But he plays Professor Albin Erbhart von Franz, which is like a perfect role for him. He's like he's a doctor, but was kicked out of the academy, and because he studies the occult, and this movie takes place in early 1800s, so you have that belief in the old world versus the new world of science and whatnot, and he just kind of represents that kind of division, Yeah, he's just a really cool character. It's classic Willem Dafoe. But yeah, everything is great in this movie. I mean, I forgot to mention the lighting, the cinematography. I believe it's the same cinematographer who's done all the other movies. Yeah, Jaron Blaschke, I believe is how you say it, or Jaron Blaschke. He's been the cinematographer in all of Egger's movies, and I just keep hoping they work together because they've all of the movies are great cinematography wise, but it's in the little details. I feel like they've gotten better and better and better and better. Like I said at the top, I feel like Robert Eggers is getting better and better and better in different ways as a filmmaker. But the cinematography in this is top notch, maybe the best thing in the movie. It looks like what the 1800s look like, and they that's on purpose, right? They weren't trying to, use modern lighting. Everything in the movie is lighting that was in that time period, and for the most part, I think all the lighting is like candlelight, fireplaces, and then moonlight. Like those three, I think is it. And my general knowledge of his other work is he'd try to do similar things, and maybe sometimes they had to, maybe use some lights, but for the most part, they try to do the same thing. But I feel like he just perfected it here. Just like the little details of like, and knowing when to have candles shine on someone's face versus behind them, or to help create that horror atmosphere, almost noir atmosphere, that gothic atmosphere. He just knows how to like find that balance, and I think he just S-tiers it here. He just gets to the pinnacle of that. like the lighting is just so good, and like it makes me feel bad watching other movies because it's just not the same. It's just you know what I mean? Like you ever watch something, or you maybe play a video game or whatever, and you're like, man, it's hard for me to play something else or engage with something else because this is just too good, you know, and it's not fair to the other thing. That's what this feels like, where I'm like, man, lighting in here is just stupid good. Like it's so good. Like I it's like in my brain, you know, that's all I can think about is like, man, how cool Count Orlok looked behind the fireplace. It's like, you know, it's just really good lighting, man. And I'll say this movie is just barely below my number one. I was looking forward to it all year. I was really hyped about it because of my enjoyment of Robert Eggers' other movies. And once I saw that first trailer, I think I saw it in theaters. Like I didn't see it online for whatever reason. And I remember seeing it in theaters and being like, oh my gosh, this is Robert Eggers' new thing. Oh my God. And like the trailer is just so good. You know, and I remember being just blown away by it. And I'm like, okay, I'm super hyped for this. We'll see. And I had high expectations, and it met them and maybe even exceeded them in a lot of ways. And, you know, I saw this on Christmas Eve in the Dolby Theater, and yeah, man, I'm so thankful I did, because it's going to be like a movie memory that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. It was just so cool to be there on Christmas Eve at 9:30 at night. You know, in a way, this movie is a Christmas movie, I guess, because I think it does technically take place during Yule, Christmas. But I don't know. It's just like the movie's cold in general, both in a climate sense, but also just in a horror sense, right? You know, cold-blooded in that way. Yeah, I'm so glad I saw it. And actually, I did get the coffin tin, which is pretty cool. Let's see if I can open it. There you go. And there's like rats in it. I think that's pretty cool. And this is like pretty, like for a lot of the, you know, the movie tie-in tin boxes and stuff, usually they're like all right, you know, maybe they're not the best quality. This is pretty good. Like I was really happy with how this looked, and I wasn't thinking I was gonna get one, but I think, you know, I lucked out we went there a little early, and I think there was like a couple left, so I'm happy we were able to get one. But they said that they actually, like, they had to show tickets now that you were seeing it that night. They wouldn't sell it to you, so I guess that's been an issue, is people are just just going to the theater just to get the movie tie-in products and then not seeing the movie. So I respect that they're like, nope, this is for the people who were coming here opening night. So really happy I got that. All right, my number one movie of 2024. And like I said, my last one could have maybe been my number one. I think this just barely beats it out. And it was another movie that like I was super hyped for. Had really, really high expectations. And it just, you know, if we're talking about like pole vaulting, you know, where you got to go over it, like they didn't just, you know, go over it. They like walked over it. It was like all day, just exceeded expectations. Yeah, man, this movie was an experience.
What if Paul Atreides were still alive?
Have you ever had a dream about your first ride?
Dune Part 2, Denis Villeneuve's, what is it, like his fifth or sixth film, but his sequel, obviously, to Dune, you know, Part 1. Man, dude, like I said, this was an experience. I had so much like hype going into this movie. I actually went and saw the first one on an IMAX re-release like the week before. It's like on a Thursday night or something, to kind of get more hyped with it. And watching it again out on the big screen, I was like, yep, I'm still hyped for this. Let's go. Like, you know, I really, really love this, but I want more. I want to know more about this world. I want to know more about these characters. And I should preface, I've never read any of the books. I mean, I did try to read the first one when I was probably too young to maybe have the literacy rate of being able to read the first one, or maybe I just wasn't invested. I think it was like 12 or 13 when I tried reading it, because I heard other people talk about it. But I've never read any of the books, but I have a general knowledge of the story, or at least the story of the first book, based off of David Lynch's Dune, which I think came out in 1984. Because I actually watched that on a flight, I think a couple months before Dune Part 2 came out, just because I was like, oh, I want to kind of see the comparison. I want to see how maybe different it is from the first movie. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with Dune prior, is watched the first movie, really liked it, and then watched the 1984 one. But yeah, all that said, this movie's I think 2 hours and 46 minutes. I think it says here, actually, yeah, 2 hours and 46 minutes, and it doesn't feel like it. I think compared to the first one definitely felt kind of slow at some parts, or definitely felt long. It's really tough to make movies that are over 2 hours and not have them feel long. I think it's really, really hard to do. But this one just did it, man. It didn't feel like 2 hours and 46 minutes. If anything, I think my only critique is I wanted more. Like, give me another hour, man. Like, it was so good. Like, the pacing was great. The bringing back the other characters from the first one, learning more about them, but also bringing in new characters and showing more of the politics of the world, was really well done. Yeah, man, it just blew me away. I mean, you also had not just the characters back. I mean, I want to say I loved Austin Butler as Fade Rotha in this. He's fantastic. A movie that didn't make my top 5, but maybe it would be in my top 10. The Bike Riders that he's in is also really fun. Go check that out if you want some more Austin Butler, but as a motorcycle cool guy. But yeah, as I was saying, the music, dude. Like, I know Hans Zimmer's done a lot of stuff, and maybe some people would say, he's done too much, and like maybe he's overhyped, and I don't necessarily fully agree with that. Like, I think his resume speaks for himself. I feel like he's gotten better over the years, over the decades. And I would say the soundtrack, the score he did for this and the first one, but even this one, I think just a little bit more, I liked. To me, I think it's as good. Maybe it's not as better, because the Interstellar soundtrack is god tier. I mean, that soundtrack with that movie. I actually saw the re-release of Interstellar in IMAX. I wish I could make an argument why that's actually in my top 5, because that movie just changes your life, man. But yeah, Hans Zimmer's music in this movie, in Dune Part 2, so good. It has like that science fiction sound, but then it has, still other elements of, modern score making, and it just works. It just works. In fact, the love theme between Paul Atreides and Chani there, like that love theme that he wrote, that I think was in the first movie, but it wasn't as often because it was, not as big of an aspect yet. But in this movie, that's part of the story. But yeah, the love theme between Paul Atreides and Chani, like, I think that's one of his best songs he's written, because like I was getting emotional in the theater, man. Like, there's like one part in the movie where it really gets loud, and like you feel it, dude. And then the chemistry between Paul and Chani, like with the music, dude, like I was like, damn, man, like this is good. This is really, really good. Like I'm feeling it, and then, like I said, the music throughout is fantastic. You have just like some battle themes, and you have some very soft stuff. Like it's such a good balance of different types of energy in this score. But yeah, to see Villeneuve's, his take on the Dune story, or rather, should say the 1984 one, to my understanding, has some of the elements from the book, but there was also some big changes in it, especially with like the ending. But this one follows the book more closely, is my understanding. I hope to read the books before the third one comes out. I think I still have a couple years. But I did buy all the books because they were on sale around the time the movie came out, so I was able to get all 5 or 6 of the books. I don't remember how many there is. but I got them. But like I like to see his interpretation of what I know of the story. And he just does a good job of knowing what pieces are important and like how to maybe explain, because like from my understanding of the first book and from what I did read of the first book, it is very like lore heavy, kind of like Lord of the Rings, right? Which I'm going to go back to about Lord of the Rings in a second here. But yeah, he does a good job of knowing how to like get the important stuff and show it or say it in a way that is easily digestible and makes sense, to someone like me who doesn't know all the deep lore about it, but gets the most important stuff. I absorb what's the most important part of the story. Yeah, the sandworms are fantastic. I don't know, I haven't mentioned the sandworms yet. Lisa and Al-Gaib, they're great. I mean, there's like so many. I can be here all day talking about each character, but like I just love the story, and then how it kind of pulls you in as an audience member, and it ties you in with like the Fremen, for example. Like I just really love how you kind of relate to them, and then how it uses that later in the film without getting any spoilers. It uses kind of the narrative and shifts it, and I think that's really cool how they did it. Like I said, without getting any spoilers, but if you've seen the movie, you maybe know what I'm talking about here. But let me go back to Lord of the Rings. People often point to Lord of the Rings as being like, the pinnacle, maybe the penultimate, is that the correct usage of that word, of fantasy movies, where it's like, there's been fantasy movies previously, and like a general moviegoer, for the most part, would seem like not many would go see a fantasy movie or have an interest in a fantasy movie. Lord of the Rings kind of changed that, right? It made Dungeons and Dragons cool and nerd shit cool. Star Wars gets a lot of credit for that as well, but Lord of the Rings, in terms of like a fantasy, I'm talking about like high fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff. Lord of the Rings made it cool for the average person, right? At least that's my impression growing up as a kid, where like everyone in my school saw Lord of the Rings, and like it would be weird for me to like talk about Dungeons and Dragons or any of that stuff when I was a kid. But when you talk about Lord of the Rings, I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, elves are cool now, all that stuff. And Lord of the Rings was a phenomenon, right? It was critically acclaimed, all three movies, right? Like everyone saw those movies. And I bring this up because I'm not gonna say Dune is hitting at the same level. I mean, it's kind of hard to compare just from a 2024 to a 2001 perspective. But so many people saw this movie. It was number one in the box office for a while for the year. I think someone beat it out. I don't remember who, but I think someone did beat it out. But it was one of the number one movies this year. And that's crazy to say, because this movie is a science fiction book classic, but has big themes about imperialism and like kind of critical of messiahs and gods and leadership in general, or well-spoken leaders, right? Has all those elements in it. And and really though, it's a kind of a goofy science fiction story too, to a degree, right? So to have like the general populace be like enjoy that is kind of crazy. And just to get to like my main point, to me, these Dune movies, especially if this third one comes, which should be Dune Messiah, based off the book Dune Messiah, if that comes out and is as good as these other two, maybe even better, I think we should have the conversation. We should have the conversation of, are these the Lord of the Rings of science fiction movies? I think that's a legitimate conversation to have in terms of just wide popularity. There's already a spin-off show. In just terms of like a general like I said, a general populace member being interested in science fiction to that degree. That a general person is going to go see Dune Messiah. a book that, from my understanding, is very weird. So that's what makes me excited, that we're even having the opportunity to be weird, make a weird movie. You know what I mean, though? It's just like, I think these movies are that good, and I still feel like I haven't seen every science fiction movie. There's a lot that I need to see, but I think this is like the kind of like the, so far, is like the most complete, like, science fiction at its like definition, movies that are really popular and kind of have an impact, you know what I'm saying, like in the industry, or in the genre rather. But that's what I'm feeling. I mean, maybe the hype's getting to me, maybe it's because it's my number one. Folks, let me know if I'm crazy here, but I really do believe that this movie, these two movies, and if that third is as good as it could be, I think we can compare it to Lord of the Rings, but for science fiction movies. And I think maybe in 20 years we'll look back and be like, yeah, you had to be there, you had to see it on the big screen. And I have a feeling they're probably going to do re-releases of the first, if not the second one, again whenever the third one comes out. Please go see it, dude. Please go see it, because it was literally an experience for me. Like I said, I was moved from that movie. I saw it 2 times in theaters, one on IMAX and one in Dolby, I believe, and I haven't felt that way since, honestly. Like Lord of the Rings, like just in terms of like, wow, this isn't just a movie. We're like experiencing something. I am in this world. I forget my reality exists. I am there, you know? And yeah, and this is Denis Villeneuve's best movie, I think, too. I love all of his stuff that I've seen. I need to see some of his early work. I've only seen Arrival Forward. I know he's done like Sicario, I think it's called. I need to see that. You know, he's one of my favorite filmmakers right now, along with Robert Eggers from before. And yeah, man, like he hit the hype. He hit the hype and just exceeded it. And every time I think about it, I watched the trailer before recording this, and it's like, dude, yeah, this movie is just so good, man. It's just so good. I don't know how else to put it. And like, it's just, it just moved me. And that's why it's my number one, straight up, is because it just straight up moved me. And I cannot wait for Dune Messiah. So those are my top movies of 2024. Let me know what you think about my list, and I would love to know what your list is. You know, is there maybe movies on here that you agree with, maybe you think should be higher, lower? But, you know, just try to avoid spoilers in the comments and be respectful and all that stuff. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And I enjoyed putting this together. One of the goals of Ethan and I is to do more videos like this, and this is kind of the first attempt at it for me. So I hope this was good, and we'll see how long it takes for me to make this video, and then we'll see what the future holds. But one of my goals for 2025 is to do this kind of style video, but a little bit shorter, and maybe just focusing on a movie that came out in 2025, you know, when I see it. So maybe it won't be like the exact night it comes out, but, you know, hey, I saw this movie that came out that I really liked, and I want to talk about it. So maybe look forward to that. And if you're interested more in like more movie reviews, kind of something like this, but a little bit more detailed, Ethan and I, along with our friend David, have been doing a current season of watching video game movies. We basically have a fantasy football kind of thing where we drafted different video game movies and we watch them and then rank them. And then Ethan and I have a whole backlog, over 50 episodes of the Sonic Movie Show, as it's called. Over 50 episodes of video game movie reviews. So if you're interested in that, go check that out on our channel. But yeah, thanks for watching, and you know, let me know what your thoughts are, like I said, in the comments, and please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribe. Helps the numbers out, and, you know, gets our name out there, and you know, feel free to share with a friend as well. But yeah, let me know what your top 5 movies are, and I'm hoping 2025 we get a lot of good movies. Looking forward to the new year. I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming out. But yeah, my name's Devon, and I'll see you at the movies. All right, one last thing, I promise. I know this video was really long, longer than I expected. But I just wanted to announce that I made a Letterboxd account. I've always seen some folks I follow on other social medias talk about Letterboxd and use Letterboxd, and I just never have for whatever reason, but I finally made one. So if you want to follow me, it's at DevCurse. I'm looking forward to posting about some of the movies I see in 2025, but also older movies as well. I think it also will just help me make a video like this maybe next year that I can look back at my notes and whatnot. But yeah, feel free to follow me.